Okay, you're very welcome back to the programme, and now we are going to be discussing 5G. And what does it mean? We don't know. I suppose a lot of us don't know. A lot of us do, but it's happening because 5G technology is to be rolled out in Ireland. Licenses have been awarded to the likes of Vodafone, Three, Imagine and Airspan, and as we could imagine, it's going to be rolled out in cities first. I imagine logistically it might be more difficult elsewhere. But we have two people who have differing opinions on 5G, and I suppose before we sort of get into a debate situation, we might I'll ask our guests their views. So we'll start with Professor Kevin Curran, who's a regular guest on this programme, Professor of Cybersecurity at Ulster University. Are people justified, or is there any justification in concerns surrounding 5G as far as you've been able to determine, Professor?
There is no concerns as far as I'm concerned. We've half a century of research into the millimetre waves which are now being used in 5G. We've had artificial radio frequencies for over 100 years. We've had thousands of studies. We've looked for the links. The people claim that there's brain cancer caused by both cell phones and wireless technology, but if there was, the studies would show an increase in brain tumours since we started using mobile phones 20 years ago, which now everyone has.
And we did have, at the time when 3G was being launched, and I think particularly maybe when we switched from analogue to digital, whilst we didn't hear it on the scale we do now, arguably because I suppose there wasn't the platform for us to do so, people were expressing similar concerns back then. I do recall that myself.
Yeah, absolutely, because again, that people were seeing that these antennas are going up everywhere, that we have this radio frequency being broadcast out into. But again, a lot of people don't understand how electromagnetic frequencies work, EMF really, and the fact is all of these technologies used for 3G, 4G, 5G are non-ionizing radiation, that they do not transform our DNA, they do not harm the DNA within our bodies to cause us any damage.
Would you accept, as though, as the WHO do, that there is some carcinogenic issues with the likes of 3G, 4G and 5G?
Of course, I'm not going to argue with the WHO. I mean, they're an independent body made up of 15 nationalities. They've done the largest research study into it, and in fact that's where the crux of the problem comes from. The 2011 report by their subgroup, the International Agency on Research into Cancer. So they looked at 5G, they looked at 4G actually, they looked at the technologies used, and they came out with the conclusion that it's possibly carcinogenic. Now, people picked up on that line, but also within possibly carcinogenic is pickles and diesel.
Sausages.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So the fact is you have 5 ratings. You have something which is carcinogenic, probably carcinogenic, possibly carcinogenic, no classification, and probably not. So if I pick an apple from a tree here in the mountaintop and I race to the UN and I get them to put all the researchers on to see, is this apple carcinogenic or apples carcinogenic? The best possible result coming back in the letter to me is probably not, because they hedge their bets, because we can never be 100% certain about anything. So therefore, in the middle of their categories is possibly not. Now, if it ever becomes probable, they'll move it up. They concluded really for anyone involved, even the guy Jonathan Samet. He's a physiologist, epidemiologist. He was the chair of the committee. He's the dean of the Colorado School of Public Health. He's been on saying that there isn't any risk.
So is this the same then, and I'm going to give Kim a great deal of time on this as well, is this the same then, there is say vaping's carcinogenic, right? I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah.
But it's much less dangerous than smoking. That seems to be the consensus at the moment. But parents and people seem okay with people vaping. Do you get where I'm coming from? So why do you think there's this such strong opposition then to 5G when we take a more lax view to other things that are listed as much more carcinogenic?
Because it uses higher frequencies, yes. generally your 4G is about the 1 gigahertz really, even below that as well. What you have is with 5G you have different frequencies, of course, right up to 70 gigahertz, right? So in the UK, for instance, in Ireland be the same. You have between 3.4 gigahertz, you have 26 gigahertz earmarked, you have 37 to 43 gigahertz and 61 to 70 gigahertz. Now it seems higher, but it's still well below the ionizing radiation is what we're worried about. No one wants ionizing radiation. We're not saying we're going to set up X-ray antennas and X-ray everyone, and we're not.
Okay.
To have ionizing radiation. Yeah. Well, I can go into that further later.
Yeah, we will, and we'll take that. But then, as far as I'm aware, 4G effectively is the bandwidth that RTE used to broadcast their signals on. That is correct, isn't it?
RTE, no, I mean, it depends. RTE is FM. Like, it depends.
No, but you remember in the TV signals, I mean, that band, when RTE, that's...
Oh, you're on about maybe when the analog was turned off.
Yes.
Correct, yeah. I mean, they're still low frequencies. Yeah,
but that is the same bandwidth. So in other words, the TV signals as carcinogenic arguably as mobile phones.
Exactly.
That's really what I'm trying to get at here.
Exactly. We're still in the low frequency range.
Right, okay. Right, that's about 6 or 7 minutes there. Right, Kim. We'll get into a situation where we can ask each other questions as well. You heard from the professor there. Obviously, he's an expert in this area, and a lot of people would trust what he has to say. But you fully disagree, presumably?
Yeah, there's loads
of... Sorry, let me beg your pardon. Kim McMenamim, who's spokesperson for Stop 5G Donegal. Kim, go ahead.
Yeah, there's loads of research out there on the effects of non-ionizing radiation, especially the biological effects. Now, biological effects are largely ignored by the mainstream telecoms and their paid scientists, etc. It's largely ignored because... simply because they don't want to recognize something that is not they want it to be like really adverse. They want the effects to be they want to see like increasing brain cancers and stuff like that. They want serious data, where biological effects are real effects. Like if you get nausea is something that happens before you vomit. It means before you become really, really sick. Nausea is a big indicator that something is wrong with the body. So people are reporting these effects like nausea, headaches, blood pressure can be affected.
But we also hear schools closing because a certain amount of children in clusters acquire brain cancer. Like this, I'm reading this stuff, but is there peer-reviewed evidence of what you're saying, or is this stuff that we've heard?
Well, there is peer-reviewed evidence. There's thousands of studies out there on the biological, which is the non-thermal effects of radiation. Now, I'm calling it radiation because a lot of the literature and a lot of the stuff you look up refers to it as EMF energy, or they refer to it as RF energy. It's actually radiation. Now, it's the non-ionizing radiation, but the thing is, right, it's the amount of time that you spend in a non-ionizing radiation environment with the Wi-Fi on, with your Bluetooth on. It's the exposure time that causes the biological effects. And not only that, it's the pulsating nature of the waves. Now, if you have a continuous wave, that's okay. Well, it's not okay, actually, but
I get what you're saying.
But if you get a Wi-Fi goes... it has a pulsating wave. Now, I did a video on Buncrana on just off the main street. It's on YouTube. It's had over 40k views, simply because people were astonished when they heard. I used a detector that modulated the waveform and put it out of sound, and I put that on purely just to show people the saturation.
What was the item that you were using? What were you actually demonstrating with that piece of equipment?
It's an EMF detector. Yeah, it was engineered and invented by scientists.
But my point is, we know EMF is there anyway. So, like, it sounds to me like something I may have seen around Chernobyl. Is that what you're trying to demonstrate here? Because you go into Chernobyl.
And then you're talking about the ionizing radiation when you talk about nuclear. So we're talking about the non-ionizing radiation. So
other than it's there, which I think even the professor's already said there, what did, in real terms, what did that video demonstrate?
It just demonstrated the amount of saturation of electrosmog in the environment. So it demonstrated that. But getting away from that, these effects, the non-biological effects, are being ignored. And they are real effects. And they are causing people real harm, because it's the long-term effect of these biological effects that accumulate and then could lead to serious disease.
Evidentially,
so this is being ignored.
Evidentially, what have we got to show that? Because even just using vaping again. Sorry, because I'm trying to dumb this down to my level.
Yep.
Everyone says it's okay, but we don't know what the impacts are in 15, 20 years. Is there any evidence to suggest that the long-term exposure to the what you're talking about actually would have, like, is it a fear or do we know it would have a negative effect on you?
Okay, and there's a recent study in 2018. I'll just read this out. It's called the NTP, which is a national toxicology program funded by the United States government. It took 10 years to complete. It's the gold standard in the USA of studies. It is the gold standard, right? Now, this was set up to show that non-ionizing radiation could not cause cancer. They set it up to show that it could not cause cancer, but the opposite effect happened, and they were totally shocked by it. That's why it got so much controversial
What did it find?
Coverage. It found that rats, because you can't test it on humans, although we are being tested and we don't know it. But rats and I think it was just, I'm not sure if there was mice involved, but rats' brains develop tumours.
At what level?
And their hearts.
Like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000, 1 in 3.
So are you trying to say that any level of cancer is safe?
Well, say, for instance, with the HPV vaccine, 1 in 60,000 people will have a very adverse reaction to it. So I'm trying to scale it. Is it 1 in 3, 1 in 10,000?
Okay, well, I think those figures are like yourself, people can go and look that up, you know.
Okay.
I don't want to spend time quoting from the study, but it is a very significant study, and it is absolute proof that non-ionizing radiation can cause cancer.
But you don't have the figures as to the level of cancer it can cause.
It doesn't matter about the level of cancer. Okay. The conclusion to the study is that rats exposed to non-ionizing radiation have developed cancer. That's a fact.
Okay. I would say that was debunked, that study, that the levels of radiation to use were 1,000 times higher than you get.
Okay, well, I could debunk your studies because simply
the simple fact is.
Well, never mind that.
Well, let's get back. Let's focus on this study, because that's a strong piece of evidence that you've brought forward. Okay, and I'll give you an opportunity. So, are you saying that that study, quoting that study, is misrepresenting the situation?
That study is quoted quite a lot by the Stop 5G groups. Unfortunately, the study used a level of energy which we're not exposed to in real life.
Do you contest that, Kim?
And I do agree with all. There is electromagnetic frequency radiation everywhere. And when it comes down to it, your incandescent light bulb offers the same amount of radiation as really 5G will offer.
Yeah. The only problem is we're exposed to a lot more of this radiation today. Like 20 years ago, the level of radiation was really, really low.
But the non-ionizing,
now it's really, really high.
It's not harmful.
Well, that is not a fact. Non-ionizing radiation is harmful, and it causes biological effects. So that's not true what he's just said.
How can you prove, Professor, that the pulsating aspect of it is not damaging, as Kim has said is the case?
I rely on the research. With the 50 years of research we have into this, the 5G levels that we're using, the frequencies, are being used by radar. In fact, 5G is safer because of the microbeam forming again. I go by the studies.
Is the 5G router in our house, which many of us have, anyone who's been lucky enough to get fibre, is that different to 5G phone transmitters?
I don't think anyone has a 5G router, really.
But it's on a frequency anyway, I don't know.
Sorry, I understand what you're saying. Okay, well, Wi-Fi really, Wi-Fi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, anyway,
well, you have 2.3...
2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz again. So this is...
So that's not 5G?
No, that's not 5G. No.
Okay, that's just...
Yeah, that's Wi-Fi.
This is what I want. This is about. Do you understand?
8 to 11.
Okay, because I've said that in the past, so I've misled people.
5G. 5G.
I think the precautionary principle should be introduced, and it has been advised by the Council of Europe to all member states that they have to label devices. They have to advise teachers. And teachers have to keep the kids safe in school about Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And there should be danger warnings put on these devices. So the governments have been... The Irish government is ignoring it.
We're doing that to gin as well, though. We're going to start putting the same kind of labelling on for gin. Does that mean we should...
I don't think there's gin going around permeating the air the way Wi-Fi is.
Okay,
I don't think it is.
I'm not trying to argue. This is the whole point.
We're not swimming now in gin. But if I was switched on my detector right now, you would hear the noise.
Yeah. Okay. And I presume all our devices. I've got a phone. You've got a tablet, a laptop.
Yeah.
You've got a tablet, and there's 2 monitors here, 2 televisions, and a massive radio tower above our head. Presumably, it would go belupas.
It's not good for you.
Okay. James Coles from the Injury Clinic. James, thanks for holding there. I just wanted to make sure Kim got a good rattle, and I'm going to go back to him shortly. You are of the opinion that 5G has an impact on people's health. Presumably you mean negatively.
Yeah. My job is testing muscles to find out what's wrong with somebody and trying to get their body working the way it should work. If somebody comes to me with a sore back, you're testing for weak muscles and trying to wake up the relevant muscle, and then that will improve the alignment of the body, and then all of a sudden a lot of muscles will start switching on. I've come across a lot. I wouldn't say it affects everybody in the same way, and I'm not an expert on 4G or 5G, but the effects of electromagnetic radiation, it's kind of, people can fob it off and go, well, that was a study in America and it doesn't really apply. But in my case, I'm seeing real results because I'm testing muscles and I'm seeing what's going on. I emailed you in there kind of a chart showing sort of percentages of in a study that I've done, percentages of muscles that get affected when somebody's wearing a phone in their pocket or wearing a Fitbit on their wrist. And the results, it was 15 people. It's only a recent thing that I've done, and 15 people were tested with and without a Fitbit or without the phone in their pocket. And as an average, 30% of a person's muscles are weakened while they're in contact with electromagnetic radiation. And it's not me trying to prove 5G is bad for us, but it is proof that there is a very measurable effect on people when they're exposed to electromagnetic radiation. Mm. So, and in a couple of cases, like one guy was coming to me as a painter, I tested 20 muscles, 9 of those were weak, and this guy's on the phone all the time. He runs a painting business. 9 of those muscles were weak when the phone was in his pocket, and then when I took the phone away from him, all the muscles that I tested were switching on perfectly. So there was nothing wrong with him when he didn't have a phone on him. And then whenever he did have a phone on him, 45% of his muscles were weakened. So that there translates into somebody coming to me with a bad back, because if those muscles are major core muscles, if they're quads, if there's a big muscle that's giving you postural support, and then you have something interfering with it and turn it off, you will end up with an injury because you don't have the strength to hold yourself. So
are you convinced to the point whereby you would avoid or limit or take precautions about your usage of 4G? Because some of these studies are on 4G, and presumably the theory would be that if it's 5G, it's going to be even worse if someone gets one of those phones. But has it changed how you use your phone? Oh,
definitely, yeah. I'm constantly preaching to everybody. If you're not using Facebook, if you're not sending an email, if you're not looking at YouTube, but if you're not connected to the internet, turn off 4G, turn off the Wi-Fi on your phone. Why have it affecting your body when you're working and resting and playing, do you know?
Okay, thank you very much for that, Professor Curran. It's obviously anecdotal.
It's anecdotal. It's a sample size of one. Yes, if I see a large-scale study conducted by scientists to verify or can repeat what he's just said.
Why would they do that? Why would they motivate it? There's a lot of money in here. This is a train that a lot of people don't want to derail. Can we trust that someone would say, right, what James has just said there is of enough concern that we will actually do, because has enough been done to examine the possible consequences of our exposure to 5G and long-term exposure to 4G?
I would say 50 years of research is sufficient.
No, I disagree. There's not been enough of research. There needs to be more research.
Who do you trust to carry that research out, Kim?
I would trust independent scientists, not related to industry. Yeah, absolutely.
But the International Agency and Research into Cancer have shown that there isn't.
Okay, you're listening to Professor Kevin Curran and also Kim McMenamim, and I'll come straight back to you after we hear from Mark. Thanks for holding there, Mark.
Hello, Greg. How you doing?
I'm all right. What say you?
Good. This is the perfect issue for wearing tinfoil hats, isn't it?
Is that how you see it?
Surround yourself in metal. However, there are genuine concerns about 5G. I respect what your guest is saying there about the scientific research. My understanding is that the scientific research has been done on the thermal effects of 5G, just on the heating effects of 5G, and not on the stress it causes to the cells. My understanding is that the 5G, the directed nature of these millimeter wave radiation, I'll get into that now in a second, causes what's called mitochondrial oxidation. So it causes stress to the cells, and that has implications in all sorts of different kinds of negative health effects.
Now, what could be the impacts of that?
Well, the reports that are coming in, again, from small sample sizes, admittedly, are things like headaches and fatigue and lack of concentration. If you see that on YouTube, there's a video of people who went to Glastonbury Festival where they set up a few 5G stations, and there were a number of people reporting ill health effects from
that. You know, there's a lot of stuff goes on at Glastonbury too, though. You know, I'm not being smart. You know? Of
course, yeah, people want to have fun. But my question is, why is this so pervasive? And why is the rush? What's the rush? Surely the burden of proof should be on the people who are attempting to implement 5G. And if there are concerns, should it not be, particularly when it comes to children? Again, some of the information that I've read says the 5 millimeter, the frequency wavelength resonates with the size of children's bodies more readily than it does with adults.
Okay, thank you very much.
Could I just make another point?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. That's what we're here for.
The 5G is a military technology, and it's being rolled out. I've seen this in strategic culture. It's being rolled out basically to facilitate military technologies. Is that not saying that we have mobile phones now because it's part of the space race? I mean, is that? I mean, obviously, you know, we have DVDs because of pornography. Why the rush?
Well,
we have the internet at the moment, and all of the privacy issues. The privacy issues with the internet are well known to everybody. Yeah. If we have 5G, we have drones everywhere.
Self-driving cars,
things everywhere. Self-driving cars, but a lot more automation than that. You'll have drones flying all over the place, and it'll be the end of privacy.
Okay, Professor Curran.
Yeah, I mean, it's driven by industry, of course it is. It's because when you're surfing the web, you won't significantly see a faster speed, really. What you have with 5G is really broadband on the go. But when it comes to the web, something like that, you don't really see the effect because you got to go to a web server and retrieve it. But when it comes to the Internet of Things, which is really what we have, is everything being connected, doorbells being smarter.
The Internet in our everyday lives.
And also autonomous.
And it surrounds us.
I'm just saying, but for autonomous cars, for instance, they need to have a very, very fast response.
Zero lag.
Exactly. So that's what 5G gives. So it's really driven by, economics to some part. But also, again, because the mobile industry is not worried about the effects.
Technology. And if there are concerns, the burden of proof should be on people who are trying to introduce this.
Sorry, I want to get to the bottom of some of these stuff that's being put out there. Yeah. What do you mean by military technology? What is there a subplot to that?
Foreign Policy magazine, which is a respected magazine in America, ran an article recently about what the Americans are doing in order to catch up with the military advances that have been made by Russia and China. And one of the main things that was mentioned was 5G as a battlefield technology, automating weapon systems.
Yeah, but the Americans are scared stiff of China and 5G.
And this is probably why they're trying to introduce this in a rush.
Well, it's not.
I think there's an unseemly rush to put this out among the population. It has not been. It's only been tested. Yes, the WHO tested it for thermal safety.
Okay, Mark.
Not for this mitochondrial and cell stress issue that I mentioned.
Good man, Mark. Nothing Mark said there. Kim, you would disagree with Kim McMenamim, spokesperson for Stop 5G Donegal.
Well, I just think, look, there is loads of evidence.
And I'm coming to that in a second.
For the 5G, that it's okay. Okay, say there is, but I don't think there's that much out there. There's loads of research and study on the biological effects of non-ionizing radiation. The thing is here, we're not against technology. We want the technology. We want it made safer. We all like our laptops or phones. There's loads of things that we can do in the meantime to keep ourselves safe.
How can you be sure?
Well, how can you be sure that it's not going to harm?
You know, exactly. But it's 50-50. But you're sitting in front of a laptop, right?
Yes.
How do you know that he's not frying you from the inside out?
Distance. If I have that on my lap, that is going to cause me electromagnetic energy going into my groin area.
But you don't want that band, though.
So you would not want that. I hardwire my whole house is hardwired. Mm-hmm. I don't have Wi-Fi. I switch the Wi-Fi off because the signal through a wire is much better as well. So that we can hardwire our homes. We can make it a lot safe. just to use a precautionary principle. Err on the side of caution, because there's not enough known. We need more research. There is doubt about this technology, even though it's fluffed up as non-ionizing radiation. It causes real biological effects.
Have you proved that, though?
Yeah, loads of proof on that.
Because some of
just look. Don't believe me. Don't believe a word I tell you. Go and do your own research. But if you're asking me now for proof, do you mind if I just look at a page here and bring up real proof and then read it out?
Okay, but
do you want me to go through that?
But is it going to be a YouTube video of people getting sick at Glastonbury?
You see, now Glastonbury. I don't know much about Glastonbury. I don't want to go there. All I know is
that was quoted as people went there and there's 5G towers and people got sick.
Why don't people just keep your mobile phone in the meantime away from your body, right? Do
your research, because I want to give you a fair crack, Kim.
Use AirTube headphones, right? That can protect you. Use speakerphone whenever you can. Do not put the phone up to your head. Keep the phone at least 1 meter away from your body at all times. If you're sitting here in the chair, have it a meter away from yourself. Switch off all aerials. People are walking around with a Bluetooth aerial on, with the network aerial on, with the Wi-Fi aerial on, and there's no need for it. They're walking about with those aerials on, and that is causing non-ionizing radiation to permeate their skin.
Stay there. If you want to dig up that research, that's why we dedicate enough time to this so everyone gets a fair hearing. Okay. Niall, good morning. Thanks for holding there.
Gia Ditch, Connors Tattoo, thanks for having me on. God be with you. I just want to thank Highland Radio, first of all, for conducting this debate. Fair play to them for doing that, because there's been no discussion at all about the rollout of this 5G. As Kim just said there's lots of evidence for the detrimental health effects of wireless radiation. The world's largest study on EMF technology, called the National Toxicology Program, showed an increase in the incidence of brain heart cancer in animals exposed to EMF.
But we've already heard from the professor
sorry, no, let me finish.
No, that's not how it works. No, that's not how it works.
EMF guidelines.
But the professor's already said that that's been disproved.
Okay, you can say the word debunk. And another thing, Professor, I don't like you using the terms 5G creeps and tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists.
All right, Niall, I think you've another platform that you can make your comments on, to be honest with you. Those words weren't used on this programme. We'll be back with more after this break. Okay, you're very welcome back. We're discussing 5G as part of our Monday Matters series on a Monday from 11 a.m, trying to get to the bottom of some of these issues. Delighted to have in studio with us Professor Kevin Curran, who's in favour of this technology. He's also Professor of Cybersecurity at Ulster University. And we also have Kim McMenamim, who's opposed to 5G and is a spokesperson for Stop 5G Donegal. We're going to be joined by Aoife very shortly, but Kim, I wanted to give you an opportunity. You were digging up some research there, and what have you got to say there? Yeah,
there's a recent study there by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences in the USA. Now, what they did was they asked participants to keep a diary of their activities on the day, and were interviewed in person to better control for possible confounding factors, as well as how typical their activities were on the monitoring day.
So were they using phones, Kim?
No, they used objective magnetic field measurements on pregnant women, and they just did it for 1 day, and from that the conclusion was that the miscarriage occurred in 10.4% of the women with the lowest measured exposure level. First quartile with the higher measured exposure level. Second,
what were they being exposed to, Kim?
They've been exposed to just a normal Wi-Fi in their homes, and they did it for a day, and the rates then went up to 24% or 24.2%. Had a higher they had higher exposure levels, and they miscarried.
Okay.
So there is a link between miscarriage and non-ionizing radiation.
I'm not familiar with that one, but again, just come back to the National Toxicology Program. Again, the interesting thing about that one, which you quoted, Kim, is that was conducted on 3G. It was conducted on the 900 megahertz, the 1.9 gigahertz again, which are actually the 3G, 4G. So really, you guys, if you go by that study and quote it, you should be stopping 4G and 3G rather than 5G, because 5G is on a different frequency. You should have a stop 3G Donegal, a stop 4G Donegal, and forget about the stop 5G, because that study, which you've quoted a few times, fair enough, really was concentrating on the 900 megahertz and the 1.9.
Well, we've got to make all this radiation safe. Yeah. That's it. We've got to lower the levels. Like the IGNIRP levels for Ireland is 1,000 microwatts per square centimetre. It's ridiculous. A square centimetre is a small amount, right?
So if you had your way, would you get rid of 3G and 2G?
In India, it's only 100. In Israel, it's only 100. Ireland has 1,000 microwatts per square centimetre. Now, that's the IGNIRP so-called safety standard that has been put about it. It's not. It's only a guideline. It was never meant to be adopted by governments.
Why is the Indian levels set so low?
Why is India and their mobile phones are working on lower power levels? Why do we have
I need
full power?
I need to see the report.
That's okay. No.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to have seen every report, Professor.
Exactly,
but I'm just going to ask you as we go.
Because there's also night and day. Just because you also see a scientific study, there is night and day between the top peer-reviewed journals like Nature, things we're familiar with. I mean, there's journals which I could spend the next 30 years with my research students and never get published in. There's journals I can get published in a day. Again, so there is night and day between, even if you read a report and it looks like it's academic and it looks very nice with the abstract and everything else, there is night and day between the top peer-reviewed studies again. And the one thing, again, I've no pony in this race. I don't work for the mobile telecommunication industry. I've been teaching computer networks for 20 years, going through the electromagnetic spectrum. I've also worked on indoor location. One of my top quoted papers is to do with indoor location. Again, so I've done...
What is indoor location?
Locating people indoors using Wi-Fi again. So,
okay.
And I also worked for many years in device-free passive localization. But I'm not a radio frequency engineer either. So if a radio frequency engineer come up to me and started telling me, you're an oncologist or someone who's an epidemiologist, they're the people you should really pay attention to. But I have worked, like I said, in device-free passive localization. I understand my radio frequencies.
Where you're going from.
So I do have a background in this area, and I'm not worried about this at all.
Aoife, are you worried? Good morning.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Aoife.
I am not against technology. I love having the internet, and it's been great for my life and my friends and stuff. But what this whole debate around 5G is doing, and it's good that the guy just said that, why aren't you against 3G, 4G, whatever? It's forcing us to kind of examine our worldview and what we're accepting as safe. And to me, side effects, like we have a culture of acceptance of side effects, and that is why we've allowed these technologies to progress, because we kind of think it's okay to have side effects. And what we're waking up to now is that there is no such thing as side effects. There are only effects. So it's not okay that a certain amount of people get sick from this. It's not okay that, it's harming children or unborn babies. Like, that's not acceptable.
So, Aoife, and I'm not being argumentative then, but why don't we ban drink or driving?
Well, like Kim said, we're not swimming around in drink, are we?
No, but there's an acceptable risk with drinking. Not acceptable. Is it acceptable is the right word? Anyway, there's
not the same risk.
Yeah,
you can't make that correlation at all, Greg.
But the reason I'm making it, Kim, is because
you can't make it.
Because you say if there's any,
you can't make it.
I can't.
No, you can't.
Right, okay.
Because there's two different variables.
That's going to make an interesting debate, because you're telling me what I can say.
I would like you to be a scientist, that's for sure.
No, but my point, you're on about acceptable risk. Acceptable risk is the only... I'm not on about science, I'm on about acceptable risk.
We are swimming right now in microwave energy. Right now. Yes. I am not drinking right now. There's not gin being poured in there like you alluded to earlier.
So you're saying...
I have no choice here.
Okay, right. So that then comes down to choice then.
Yeah, choice is a big thing. Yeah, it's a big subject as well.
I would say we always are. Ultraviolet, the sunlight is electromagnetic, radiation. It's just natural. Sunlight.
But apparently, some sources say, some scientists say it's dangerous.
Yeah, if you spend too much time in
if you spend too much time swimming in Wi-Fi energy, is that not the same?
No, it's not. The studies support
How is it not the same?
Skin cancers.
No. Forget the studies. There's studies for and against. Right. Your view is, we've got all these studies, and my view is I've got all these studies. All I'm saying is use the precautionary principle. Right now, make yourself safe. Switch your Wi-Fi off at night. Switch it off when you don't use it. You don't need it.
Can I Kim back in here?
It's a thing that you just don't need to be using 24/7.
Kim, final word to you just for this segment, please. Aoife, sorry, I beg your pardon, Aoife?
Yeah, me, okay.
Sorry, no, that was my fault. Sorry, Aoife, I'm getting flustered here.
Right, okay. What we're seeing now in the world is that there's so much money to fund research that it is very difficult. And you said this, Greg, it's very difficult to know who to trust with research, which is kind of a good thing in a way, because it's forcing us to start trusting ourselves. I've had a smartphone for a few years now. I very rarely have it off speaker. So if I'm talking to somebody, it's on speaker. Okay? I never put it in my pocket. I would never have it near me when I'm sleeping. And that's just because I know when it's near me, it heats up my fingers. If I have it near my face, it heats up my face.
It's a precaution that you take. Okay.
But can I just say what you're saying there? And
Please,
I know
Eva.
why you're saying that about the alcohol and stuff. It's very similar to the smoking ban and the whole thing with big tobacco. And, I've been on your show before about Roundup. A lot of this science, it's old science, it's 70s, 80s, 90s science. What Kim is talking about and what I follow a lot, it's the new science, things like epigenetics, things like neuroscience. All of these new sciences are showing us how sensitive we are to these things, and we need to just take precautions.
Okay.
It's here now. We all want into the internet, don't we? But we need to just proceed with caution.
Thank you, Eva. I appreciate that.
They need to be protected because their brains are very thin compared to an adult's, right? Now, the SAR test was done on an adult model. It was not done on a child. So children are in school from 9 o'clock in the morning to, say, 3, and they are swimming in Wi-Fi energy. And that is wrong. It's immoral. And just because there is doubt right now, the precautionary principle should be introduced to all schools in Ireland.
Professor, what's swimming around in Wi-Fi energy? What does that mean?
The fact that, there's electromagnetic waves going through, people, we're broadcasting so much artificial, radiation. But again, it's low frequency, which is fine, from AM radio, FM radio.
Low frequency is not fine. The Garda Tetra run on 17 hertz, and loads of policemen are getting pectoralis major cancers because of the wearing the unit here on the chest.
Are the police unions coming out on that, are they?
They are. The GRA have done a statement. You can look up the GRA statement online. They are totally concerned.
It's not a loaded question.
They are concerned about the effects of the Tetra on their bodies. And any Garda listening, I would be carrying that in my hand. I would not have that on my chest.
17 or for instance, just to let people know, electromagnetic radiation is carried on waves. Again, you measure the crest of a wave. 4G, for instance, has 1 to 1.2 billion waves per second. Again, and that's still safe. Again, so 17 hertz wouldn't make sense. But
there is no safe level. There is. I'm sure you'll agree with me.
There is no safe level.
Well, how do you define safe? Okay, how do you define
which is non-ionizing?
But would you say there is
non-ionizing causes biological effects?
Would you say there is when you talk about a safe level? Do you say there is would you accept that some people will, although them very much in the minority, will have adverse reaction to it?
I don't know. I think some people have psychosomatic problems again. I've seen the documentary.
There's loads of people who are electrosensitive, and they are the canary in the coal mine, and they pick up the effects of the Wi-Fi radiation early. So those people are lucky because they can move house, or they can get rid of their Wi-Fi. The people I feel sorry for, or the people that I am concerned about, is people who are not electrosensitive, who are accumulating the long-term effects of this radiation. Look, we're not against technology. We all love our technology. Just hardwire your home. Err on the side of caution. Protect your children. Do not let them have a laptop.
Just in terms of 5G, because we'll tell you the reason I'm talking about 5G is because 5G's been rolled out now.
Well, 3G, 4G, 5G, it's all electromagnetic radiation.
Just the 5 just at the moment, and I take your point, but
so your light bulbs. You've got to remove all your light bulbs as well. You've really got to take out the power. Why have power in your house? Power volts have 50 to 60 hertz. Again, why not get rid of all the cables in your house?
I'm not saying get rid of anything. I'm just saying, I agree with you. That energy is, of course, electromagnetic as well.
Do you have power in your house? Do you have power in your house?
Of course, I've got electromagnetic power in my house. Yeah, I mean, everybody has. But we can keep the levels down. The Wi-Fi is increasing that astronomically, and it's affecting our health biologically.
I really wanted to stick on 5G, because the problem we have when we try and have this conversation is people bring everything into it, and we're not learning anything, or we're no further on. So
can I just say something on the 5G? Just the 5G.
No, let me bring Mark Steele in then, because I've held Mark for a bit. If you don't mind, I'll come back to you then. Mark, sorry for holding there. As you can imagine, lots of people have lots to say on this. What do you believe? Are you in? Would you have reservations about 5G or not?
Well, I want to dispel a few of the bits of misinformation that I've heard today, especially from the professor. Non-ionizing radiation is toxic. The 5G technicalities of 5G's collimated signals, you'll agree, the IEEE show that it collimates a signal. Now, at about 10 electron volts, to 30 electron volts, you can actually cause ionization. Now, collimated microwave radiation signals cause that ionization. So what they're doing, they're building transmitters that focus signals, increasing the power density well over ionization effect. That's a fact.
Right, what do you say to that, Professor? 1 second, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the literature does not support that, and the evidence and everything else. No, I just have to disagree completely with all my heart on that one. Yeah.
Well, answer this question then. How does a laser, you say non-ionizing radiation doesn't carry enough energy. How does a laser then cut stainless steel?
Which frequency are we talking about? And power level. A laser is totally different. It's totally different. It's a totally different technology.
A 5G is a collimated focus signal. It's used by a number of military around the world as a battlefield weapons technology. And the reason for that is because it does harm. Anybody that says otherwise either don't understand what 5G is or don't understand the non-ionizing radiation spectrum. It's quite obvious.
The World Health Organization disagrees. The International Agency on Research into Cancer, all the independent bodies, the research, the scientific literature differs with you.
Right, well, the NTP study, the Ramzini Institute, the recent Israeli study show that non-ionizing radiation causes cancer. That is a matter of fact. I don't know where you're getting your facts.
I know that study. That study has been debunked, the one on rats. It uses a completely different frequency and, again, level of absorption.
I've never heard as much rubbish in all my life.
Okay. I just go by the research.
Study. Who debunked it? The industry?
Yeah, who debunked it exactly?
Who debunked it?
All my colleagues, everyone I know.
Name one.
Okay.
My colleagues?
Yeah, go on.
Well, they're on the web.
Steele, thank you very much. Okay, we'll be back with more after the break. Okay, finally then to you, Professor Kevin Curran, Professor of Cybersecurity at Ulster University. When you hear the arguments against 5G, your not default position, because this is not a negative, is that, hold on a second, I'm going by professionals in the area, I'm going by independent surveys. You say you've got no dog in the game, and you draw on the information from your colleagues. So, go ahead, yeah.
Not my colleagues. I draw on the information from the World Health Organization, the Internet Agency on Research into Cancer, and again, that they've concluded that there is no carcinogenic link from 5G. Also, I would say that a lot of people go back because they did say possibly carcinogenic, but what I say is that's like pickles and diesel. In other words, again, and the other study, again, quoted by Kim and some of the callers, was a National Toxicology Program study recently, again, and it said that it caused tumour in rats. Now, again, that these tumours were so small that they could have occurred by chance, and also the levels of power used were not something we're subjected to. So the main study that the naysayers are saying about 5G is not a gold standard.
So why would Brussels say, for instance, then, which is often quoted,
this is politicians. They have to listen to constituents. There's worries out there. There's 5G, stop it, on Facebook. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So politicians will just do anything to get the vote. They'll listen to them and say, okay, we need more research again. So really, but
you're saying that's not science-based?
It's not science-based. Right. It's not science-based.
Okay, Kim.
So just going to debunk all the studies he talks about. Most of those studies are old, and they are based on one call per week over 6 months. Now, there's debunking for you, but anyways,
studies
you can look it up. You can look it up. I'm not going to get into it. You can look it up.
You're not going to get into it.
There's loads of studies.
What do you mean one call per week, sir?
Well, do you want me to
just tell me the study so we can
have the debate? Do you want me to go on the internet? Do you want me to go and look it up? No, because I have it here. Like, it's a study that I'll okay,
but you can't tell me which one it is.
So he can't tell me. He debunked the NTP.
Yeah.
Because his colleagues said so.
No, not my colleagues.
You just said that. I asked you and you said, I said, name one of them. You could name one of them?
Name one of who?
So I was just...
Lee McDade, my colleagues.
You said your colleagues debunked it. You said your colleagues debunked it. So I'm debunking
all the scientists.
A lot of the tests, a lot of tests that say it's safe. Is there tests that say it's safe? I don't know. But a lot of tests that say it's safe are based on one call per week. We now make maybe 60 calls a day. I don't know, according to your usage. But industry-sponsored research finds no effect. Independent research finds effect. There is your balance, right? There is doubt about this energy. precautionary principle, like has been introduced in India and all the other countries who've lowered the ICNIRP level, which is only a guideline anyways, because they're concerned about their citizens. Ireland must do the same. We must hardwire our homes, we must switch our Wi-Fi off, and we must protect our children.
So what about our mobile phone network? Do you think that the power on that should be reduced?
Yes,
so
it can be reduced.
That would reduce
in actual fact, the power in the phone itself could be reduced. Our phones are all at full power.
If we reduce power, does that mean our signals get worse?
Naturally, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, there's the trade-off. Well, how come the telecommunications company in India and Israel are all working fine? How come they're all working? Well, I'm not talking about Brussels. But how come they're all working fine in China, in India, and all the places that have lowered the level? How come their telecommunications structure is quite good?
All right, that's where we have to leave it. Unfortunately, that's Kim McMenamim, who is very much opposed to 3G, 4G, and 3G.
We are Stop 5G Donegal. Find us on Facebook.
Yeah, but you're also against 3G and 4G as well.
We are against any technology that has the potential to harm us through the biological effects that are proven. That are the internet is awash with the studies. You can tell, debunk this study and that study. The studies are there. Don't believe a word I tell you. Don't believe the word the professor tells you, especially.
That's no
go
good
and look it up yourself.
And therein lies the problem.
Just go and look it up.
People are doing that, and there are companies.
Well, just look it up yourself.
Yeah, but there's companies that want us to believe whatever we want to believe for their own benefits, either for or against.
Well, people will believe what they want to believe anyway.
So we just Google
Google the stuff, whatever you want. DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to do. Check it out. It's all there.
I don't know how to answer that, but just basically people should pay attention to people who know about it. Talk to radio frequency engineers or read the studies, is all I can say.
Back tomorrow morning at 9. Thanks to Professor Kevin Curran and Kim McMenamim.